All right, for this week's assignment, we are now going to be adding flesh or muscles and skin to our stick figure, therefore giving it a little bit more of a realistic or more human-like figure. And just to go over proportions, remember, on average, an adult person is 7 to 8 heads tall. Okay, so if you have a big head, you will have a longer body. If you have a smaller head, you will have a shorter body. Hence the reason why basketball players are huge. So if you ever meet a professional basketball player and see them up close, you'll notice that all of their facial features are going to be huge and their body features are huge. Their heads are huge, therefore it needs to be proportioned to the rest of their body. They wouldn't be able to have a regular size shaped head like I do or you do because they are much taller than us. All right, so what we're going to do today is adding muscles. Muscles are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. We're only going to be adding them to the limbs, really. Okay, so our muscles wrap around our bones, right? And then our muscles and bones are encased with our skin. So we're going to start with the biceps and triceps. So on average, our muscles start and end at joints. So they're pretty skinny at the joints, and then they bulge out and then taper again at the joint. Same thing over here. Now, obviously, if you really wanted to give your person huge, yoked out muscles, you can, but that's up to you. I'm going to do an average person muscles. Okay, so the forearm. Our forearms are a little different than our upper arms. So if you notice, our forearms are thicker or wider than our wrists. Our wrists get pretty tapered. You have very little muscle around your wrist. So I'm going to start him off a little bigger at the elbow and then taper him off at the wrist. Okay. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So for the tricep, which is the bottom part, it's not going to be that big because he's slightly flexed. And I'm going to make his bicep a little bigger. Okay. And then same thing for the other forearm. Bulge at the elbow and then taper into the wrist. Okay, for the legs, our quads and hamstrings, pretty big. The biggest muscle group in our bodies. Start and bulge out pretty quick and then gets into our knees. I'm going to do the other side too. Might as well. Bulge out and down to the knee. Bulge out, down to the knee. Notice that there's space. Don't worry about that space as of right now. Okay, so these two legs are different, right? This one's pointed at us and this one's to the side. So this one that's pointed at us, and give it a calf muscle. And then our lower legs are very similar to our forearms. They bulge at the closer to the knee and then they get a little thinner, right? This one's going to be slightly different. This one will be bigger on the left hand side because the leg is pointed that way, or the foot is pointed that way. So this would be the calf muscle, and this muscle over here is just going to be the shin. Okay, so it's a little thinner. There's our muscles, all right? Our major muscle groups. And now what we're going to do is add the skin. The skin's pretty easy because it just lays down on top of the muscle that we've already put down. So I like to start over here by the neck, or the bottom of the head, and then create the shoulder or the traps, right? And then the skin is going to sit down on top of the shoulder joint. And then I'm going to skip the elbow joint and hug the forearm and then down into the wrist. Same thing on this side. Hug the wrist, skip the elbow, and the armpit. So remember, we are no longer drawing a stick figure, so the armpit should not be over at the joint. If we look at David's, or Michelangelo's David, look at where his armpit is compared to his joint. His joint is way up here. His armpit is here. So his armpit is going to be about here, right above the bottom of the second head, right? And then all I'm gonna do is bring it in and hug the rib cage a little bit, and then add a little bit of a curve there, all right? And then go down the hips, follow the quads. Same thing we did with the elbow. We're gonna skip the knee joint and go down to the calf. And on the inside, again, skip the knee. And for the skin on the inside of the leg, we're actually gonna connect it to where the bottom of the spine is, okay? And then to go over here, we're actually gonna go leave this space and connect it over to our leg, skip the knee joint, and down to the calf. Up the front of the leg, skip the knee joint, up our hip, and over to our other arm. So this armpit should be higher, slightly higher than the one on the left, just because the shoulder is higher. And then I'm gonna hug the upper arm, skip the elbow joint a little bit into the wrist. Skip the elbow joint and over to the shoulder and up the neck. Now there is our person now. Stick figure inside, muscles and skin added. So step 7 was muscles, and step 8 was skin. Okay. And so now for this week's examples or practice, instead of doing the stick, you're still going to do the stick figure to start off, right? Measure the 8 heads, or 7 to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mark here to tell me how far I'm going to go. So I like to go from the stick figure straight to the skin, but only because I have done this enough times that I feel comfortable skipping the muscles. I'm gonna make this one a little more exaggerated than the first one I did on the left. And I'm just leaving little segments for the joints. All right, so what I do is I do the stick figure and then I go straight into the skin, because I already know how it's going to sit. Since the stick figure is inside of the skin or in the middle of the skin, I just go ahead and leave a little room. Ran out of room for the hand. And there's my stick figure. Oops, I think this is a little too, there, that's a little better. And this is what you guys are gonna practice for this week.